It was April. The lecture ended at 2:45 p.m. and Yuil Han, the new student, ran out of the main hall as if he were afraid to be second. He didn't know anyone, so no one was going to stop him. Yuil Han walked at a steady pace and, after passing through the hall, headed for the hill. That was the first time he thought anything was wrong. There are no people here. A lot of the lectures ended at 2:45 p.m. Of course, not many people will go straight home, but some must go out to the square, or to the hill, right? It's not a high school festival right now, what the? There might be some college event I haven't heard about. It made sense. After all, he ran out of class, and he might not have heard about the announcement. Yuil Han came down the hill, a frown on his face, and was about to take the express bus. Except that it wasn't just the buses, not even the cars were passing by. Maybe the military rounded up all the civilians and forced them into military training? Maybe there's some kind of hide-and-seek school that everyone goes to but him? He thought of many things, but they were all meaningless. This was a guy who hadn't even held a girl's hand in 20 years, so it wasn't that weird. However, when he stepped outside the gate, what is it? There were no people. What? This? That? There were no people. What happened? What happened? Yuil Han was in a panic, and was running around repeating the same question like an idiot. No one. Nowhere. It was simply impossible. It was like all the people of the world just went on a picnic at the same time. But the reality was before my eyes. No one. They just weren't there. He looked out the windows of the restaurants. There was still steam coming from the food, and the chairs looked like people had been sitting there a second ago. Also, chopsticks, spoons, forks, etc. were lying right on the table, or in the plate. It was as if people had disappeared while they were eating. In other restaurants and stores he saw the same picture. But that was not the only thing that was strange. Likewise, cars were abandoned in the middle of the road. Some had crashed into each other, and were on fire. Shit. He didn't understand what was going on, but he knew very well that the situation was extremely dangerous. Yuil Han ran until he was sweating, but no people or cars were coming his way. As if waiting for him, boom, a car exploded. A hot wind blew from the side of the explosion, and Yuil Han ran in the opposite direction, as if the wind was driving him. He cried, for his own reasons. Avoiding the explosion, he ran to the bus stop. Let's go home first. Maybe things will get better if I eat my mom's food, wash up, and go to bed. As soon as he avoided the explosion, the stupid thoughts returned to his brain. This time, however, it wasn't because of people. It was because the bus hadn't arrived. What the hell? Holy shit. What's going on? Yuil Han has always been proud of his resilient psyche. He went through elementary school, high school, and high school all by himself. He ended up going to a famous university, and he was confident about his future. They say that humans were created as half of a whole, and they need another person to go through life. Yuil Han didn't believe that, and believed that he could do everything on his own. If he had to, he would just become number one in the whole country, and he would get his way. That's why he liked his name so much. His name sounds like unique. However, this situation was completely different. Am I the only one who has crossed over into another world, or what? Or what? The situation that happened to him was so absurd that he was babbling some nonsense. Of course, nothing changed. The bus had not arrived, and because he was running so hard, his legs began to hurt. He became even sadder when he saw teardrops falling to the ground, right out of his eyes. Thinking about crying when you're already a university student. Shit. When else would I cry if not in this situation? I was sad that everyone ignored me in elementary school, but now I'm being ignored by the whole Cheongnogu district. He realized that no matter how much he yelled, nothing would change. He was tired, and he was sweating. For starters, he had to go home. Let's go on foot. Even though no one was there, he still spoke out loud, hoping someone would hear him. The walk took 1.5 hours. He came home, but as expected, no one was home. He waited for his father to return from work, but all the clocks, including the electronic ones on his computer, just froze. His father did not return from work, no matter how much Yuil Han expected him. Several hours seemed to pass, but the sky outside the window was just as clear. He turned on the TV, but nothing was shown. The radio was also silent. It seemed to him that all the people on Earth had really disappeared. They had left Yuil Han at the worst possible time. The water and gas worked, so he took a shower and ate ramen. OOF. It was delicious, and that fact made him despondent again. He ate and cried. After lunch, Yuil Han wanted to sleep. It no longer mattered whether there were people or not, whether it was night or day. He would go to sleep anyway. Something might change if I slept with this naive thought. He was about to lie down when a beautiful girl with white wings on her back appeared. Whoa, there really is one. It was a girl, with a very rude attitude. Who are you? Yul Han, who usually slept naked, pulled the blanket over himself. The girl looked at this scene as if to say, quite, but then quickly corrected her face, and said, Call me by my appearance. A trespasser on private property. I am a messenger of God, an angel. She looked at Yul Han and emphasized every word she said. Yul Han also saw that she just appeared in the room. He could accept the fact that she was an angel without even being surprised. Today's events were far more surprising. But the angel's next words brought him back down to earth, and shook him to his core. I don't have time to talk, I'll get right to the point. You have been unaccounted for with humanity. Unaccounted for. The expression on Yul Han's face became strange. Being unaccounted for was something that had a direct bearing on his life. First he was left out of elementary school when he wasn't taken to a picnic. Then a training camp in high school, he was left out. A trip in high school, and even in college. The Lord God sensed that a great cataclysm was about to overtake the earth, and so transferred all of humanity to countless other worlds. And during this process, you were unaccounted for some reason. And now he was unaccounted for on the scale of the whole human race. His thoughts began to drift away, but he tried to remain conscious by asking the angel, what is this big cataclysm? This means that the earth is ready to move to the next level. He wanted to respond like when he was pulled to play soccer for his father, but he held back. What changes will happen when the level changes? Higher energy will be discovered on earth. This is called mana. In addition, the Akashi Chronicles will come into contact with the earth, and humans will be allowed to possess some of them. This is called characteristics. This is a very easy and straightforward explanation. I'm pretty capable. Angel was very proud when she heard Yul Han's praise, and she stuck out her chest slightly. Yul Han, who was just waiting for that, asked his question, which began with a but. But why was there a need for humanity to go to another world? There was no such thing in the novels. The fact that mana will appear on Earth means that animals will evolve. Monsters. You will confront them. He was already expecting it when he heard the word mana. Animals adapt to mana faster than humans. Therefore, if humans are left in the dark, there is a good chance that they will disappear after the great cataclysm. There are already dozens of worlds where humans are extinct. So the Lord God has judged that the people of Earth must adapt to mana in a safer environment. Does this mean that people from Earth have been sent to other worlds where the people there are already adapted to mana? Of course. Others, people from other worlds, will be rewarded for helping the people of Earth get used to mana. And of course there are people who won't be able to adjust. But we can't take care of everyone. It was obvious. Even Yul Han thought they had done a lot. However, there was also the question. These monsters, can't we kill them with guns? Or an artillery shot? A monster created by mana cannot even be destroyed by a nuclear warhead. Then, people really should have been improved. Sure. That's why the Lord God is merciful and loves everyone. Angel stuck her chest out again in arrogance. Yul Han, who had been waiting for this moment, asked with the saddest expression on his face he could muster. What about me? Angel was silent. What about me? When Yul Han asked again with pressure, she turned away from him, and spoke in a low voice. I think there's been an error. Please, can you be more specific? Tickets were already sold out. You can't go to another world. No tickets left at all. No, this god is a piece of dog shit, isn't he? When Yul Han exploded, the angel, who understood his emotions, began to comfort him. But there will be a bonus for the forgotten one. I don't need this. Send me to the next world, too. The moment all humans were sent to other worlds, time stopped on Earth. You will not be affected by time until humanity returns to Earth. Simply put, you won't age. Well, in fact, people who have been sent to other worlds won't age either. Send me there too, damn you. Besides, the Lord God will give you a bonus to the Chronicles when the great cataclysm happens. That's great, isn't it? Stopping his shouting, Yul Han was tempted by the word bonus. What about mana? I have to practice, too, don't I? This is impossible until the great cataclysm happens. Send me where everyone else has been sent. Send me now. This is not possible. Yul Han went into hysterics again, while the angel only shook her head. It really doesn't seem possible. Even though this is God. God has set 10 years of adaptation. So please work on yourself during that time. I will carry food for you. You said time stood still, but why am I hungry? Cells don't age, but you evolve. Just think of it as not aging. It's a little different from stopping time, isn't it? You can't use mana, so at least train your body. Think of yourself as freaking lucky. All of humanity has a chance to practice mana, but once they hit back, their power is nullified. And she says that's comforting? Yuil Han sighed, and fixed his gaze on the angel. It's all their fault, but she grandly declares that God is merciful. Woof. 10 years. At last Yuil Han began to realize. 10 years? Wouldn't I be able to take it? With his innate attitude toward life, he convinced himself it wasn't so bad. It was time for one last question. And why am I not accounted for? Why just me? Having written a list of people to be sent to other worlds, the Lord God could not find you. He said you have a gift for hiding. And so Yuil Han, the only one on earth, began his life. After sleeping, Yuil Han went to the kitchen, where there was food brought by the angel. Angel wasn't there, but he wasn't surprised, since she said they would meet very rarely. It's delightful. Now that he was one, he was touched by such a simple thing, and he wasn't lying about the taste. He felt guilty, but Angel's food tasted better than his mother's food. The food was nutritious and delicious at the same time. And if she were rich, she'd be the perfect wife. Who married the angels? The other angels, right? Thinking about nonsense, he was about to do the dishes when the dishes disappeared on their own. I guess that was just as much a bonus from God. Yuil Han washed his hands, got dressed, thinking that he had been seduced by an angel, and started to put on his socks to go to the institute when he remembered that he didn't need to go there. Then, what to do? Soon, the answer came of its own accord. Didn't the angel tell him to start training his body? Although the cells weren't aging, they were active, which meant training wouldn't go in vain. Frankly, he didn't like to do much physically. He had no athletic ability, and no good memories regarding competition. In high school, at a competition, his baton slipped out of his hands and hit the gym teacher's wig instead of another player's hands. There was such a thing. Great memory. However, to use this as an excuse, as if it were a small child, the situation was quite different. Won't monsters appear in just 10 years? I can't practice mana like all other people, so I'll do what I can. Going to the gym, After this decision, Yuil Han stood up and sighed. He decided to train, which meant it was time to read about how to do it properly. After studying materials before lunch, he ate lunch and left. The nearest gym was open, as if it should be. Numerous exercise machines awaited Yuil Han. OOF. Yuil Han, who was now motivated, quite a bit, approached the bike that would destroy his fat pile. That was the beginning of body improvement. He went to the gym without complaining. For 3 years. Are you really a modern person? How can you do the same thing for 3 years? It was the moment an angel appeared and asked him. But I have to do it. You have to. That's why I'm doing it. It's not that different from studying for 3 years in higher education. Angel looked at Yuil Han as if he were a monster. Like she said, he wasn't aging, but his body, after enough food intake and intense training, was developed to the point where he looked like a trainer who appeared on television. Well, that was obvious. He practiced all day long. You are an extraordinary man. Although I knew that already when you were able to hide from God. Don't talk like it's my fault. And he went to the gym for 2 more years. He had 5 more years to spare. And he got tired of going to the gym every day. Should I learn some martial arts, and some martial arts? There's no one to teach you, is there? Although she said they wouldn't see each other often, she appeared quite often, and probably got used to Yuil Han. But she wasn't polite to him at all. Her wings aside, she was just a beautiful older sister. He didn't feel badly about her. I don't know why, but the internet and electricity still work, so, I'll study alone, watching YouTube videos. Well, time has stopped. You're still going to use that excuse, aren't you? Yuil Han stopped looking at the angel and sighed. If you were to recommend one thing to me, what would it be? No holds barred fighting and the master of the spear. Well, I don't think there will be many videos on that, so learn the basics until you die. I said, one thing. Isn't there 5 years left? Just learn the basics for both. And how? Were the fights without rules systematic? Yuil Han, who was about to start complaining to the angel, changed his mind when he saw her serious face. It wasn't like she was teasing him. She was advising him good martial arts that would actually help when the great cataclysm came. He had no choice. If it was an angel's recommendation, he would just have to follow it. Yuil Han muttered to himself. Light movements of the body. The altered body could feel the time. At first he was sad and alone. But when he lived for a while, he got used to it. Isn't the human capacity for adaptation amazing? Everything was clear with food and sleep, and there was an activity he did every day. Besides, there was an angel who chatted with him from time to time. True, there were times when he thought of his mother and was sad. I have to endure 5 more years. Just 5 more years. Let's just do it. With that thought in mind, Yuil Han planted his huge body in front of his computer. He thought that fighting without rules and spear classes would be hard to learn just by watching videos, but he had 5 more years. Yuil Han just thought he would do it if he lowered the basics a little bit. 2 years, and he kept making mistakes. His body was strong, but if he never fought people, fighting without rules was the same thing to him as a girl. It could only exist in his brain. There was progress with the spear. Yuil Han, who did not know martial arts, used a long wooden stick instead of a spear to repeat the moves in the video. But over time, the stick turned into a spear. Yuil Han learned a few things. Martial arts, after all, coincides with studies. Even the impossible becomes doable if repeated tens of thousands of times. This faith guided him. It was the same with his body, only with a spear. Maybe ultimate fighting was the same thing? Yuil Han became more interested in this art form, and began to seek it out with more enthusiasm. When he decided he was going to do it, progress was made. The most important thing in fighting without rules is to kill the enemy without any rules at all. As he studied more and more books and different martial arts, Yuil Han felt that he began to understand a little bit. Spear work is the same. He began to use his body instead of just using his hands. Movements before the attack, movements after the attack, movements that would increase the strength of the attack. His steps and eyes improved and spear techniques evolved. It was a positive change that came from his study of no-holds-barred fighting. Yuil Han's muscles, which were simply developed, now began to develop battle-oriented skills. It was to the point of surprise that when 8 years passed, since he was unaccounted for, no information was kept about him either. Angel was surprised. You ate some strange drugs, didn't you? You mean my efforts? What an amazing person. Or are all people like you? Leave me alone. Yuil Han's problem was that he had to figure out if certain techniques would work on living people. How much longer would he have to practice on sandbags? In his 4th year of martial arts training, Yuil Han thought about it because he was unsure of his strength. If he had been told to fight 9 years ago, he would have run away. Or called the police. You know. With those words, the angel pointed to herself. Yuil Han asked in doubt. Do you want me to hit you, angel sister? Even though I look like an angel, I am still a messenger of God, and I am a supreme being. I am unimaginably more powerful than you think. You know ultimate fighting, right? Fighting without rules was ruthless combat. It was a fight not to knock his opponent unconscious, but to kill him. Of course, he had only been training for 4 years, but Yuil Han was well aware of how dangerous it was. OOF, I'm the one who told you to study it. Just attack it. Is it really okay? Then you won't say you're taking it back. It's okay. Angel stuck out her huge useless chest and assured him. Yuil Han looked at her, then made a decision, and, opening his eyes wide, went for her. Eat my fist, containing the resentment of 9 years of isolation. Up. And he was beaten. Angel turned out to be the star of a no-holds-barred fight. Now do you understand? You can use me as an opponent at any time. That's the best service you can get from an angel. No. Being beaten and suffering from bruises all over his body, Yuil Han declined her offer, but unfortunately, he had no right to refuse. It was because Angel really wanted to help him survive the Great Cataclysm, after she saw him get serious for 9 years. Yuil Han thought it was no good, but even if he wanted to, he couldn't escape from the angel. The battles with the angel made his methods improve many times faster. He didn't want to fight her, but the growth was just fine. I want to stop feeling this pain, and knock this woman down, and no matter what I have to give up for it. That was the goal he was striving for. Angel was proud, and Yuil Han was in pain. His methods in unlimited fighting had improved immensely, as had his control of the spear. It's been 10 years. Yuil Han showered, shaved, and looked at the figure in the mirror. His body was so strong that he was able to fight a one-on-one wolf with his bare hands. But his face was still young, so there was a strange disharmony. It would be nice if I were a little taller. Won't you grow after the Great Cataclysm? Your face is a little disappointing, but your figure is gorgeous. If you grow up a little bit, that would make a great half-body dot. What was that about my face? He looked in the mirror. His eyes, which were small, his eyebrows parted, his nose, which was not raised, his lips a little pale, and his skin even paler. He couldn't deny that his face had some lack of vitality. But it was his face. A unique face in all the world. You've engraved your own body with painstaking work. You'll be able to kill small monsters without much difficulty. If so, you will quickly gain levels. Thus, mana will soon become available as well. Angel said so. She was a little disappointed as she prepared to say goodbye to Yuil Han, who immediately asked, "How can I kill those monsters? I thought you said you couldn't kill monsters without mana." This is about high-ranking monsters, consisting of high-level energy. Low-ranked monsters can be killed with weapons, or spears, or knives easily. You tricked me, Angel. OOF. I didn't lie. You just didn't ask for details. Angel stuck out her breasts proudly, and chattered away. This woman was constantly bragging about her sexuality. Even when his mind was busy, he couldn't help but think about it. His anger boiled over, but after a while, he calmed down. After all, it was a deception for good. It filled the gap as he could not use the mana. Thinking about it, the anger went away. Normal college life won't be possible anymore, will it? Of course. Practically the whole society will be paralyzed. And then a period will begin in which fighting ability, not academic ability, will be necessary. Fu. When the unaccountable appeared, at first, I thought heaven was ruined, but because of your persistence, you will succeed in the future. The time had come. It was the same time as 10 years ago. Of course, Yuil Han couldn't determine the time himself, but an angel told him so. He deliberately came to the same place, the square on campus. It was a scene he hadn't seen in 10 years, but everything remained the same. Thank you for everything, Sister Angel. Whoa. It was the first time he had ever said thank you. She also didn't think he would say thank you, and she was a little nervous, but, at the end, she laughed and flapped her wings closer. All these 10 years with you, I had just as much fun. Will I see you again? It's up to you. The angel finished to this point, and after a little hesitation, she added, "My name is Litter." Yuil Han kept muttering her name, as if he was afraid to forget it. The angel, Litter, watched this scene and began flapping her wings again in satisfaction. I have to go. Time on Earth will soon resume and people will return. Fly more carefully, Sister Litter. After saying her last words, Litter slowly flew off into the sky, and Yuil Han tried his best to suppress his disappointment over saying goodbye to Litter, and in excitement, before returning to his normal life. He closed his eyes. Nothing happened. Yuil Han opened his eyes, and saw Litter, who was in a panic. "Can you explain?" Yuil Han said in a quiet voice. Litter slowly landed on Earth, laughing a quiet, "Tee-hee-I" laugh. Then she said, "I think there's been a mistake. Hey you, crazy. Perhaps due to time stoppage, or other reasons, there is a slight deviation of the time axis. That's normal. It won't be for long. You have to endure another 10 or 20 years. It's that fucking time again." Yuil Han went into a frenzy, rolling around in the grass. It was because he knew that if he attacked the angel, he would be beaten. When Yuil Han calmed down, after the grass was all over his body, he muttered, looking resentfully up at the blue sky, "Okay. It's only 10 or 20 years. I'll wait, no problem. People adapt easily." He had succeeded so far, so he would succeed in the future. The positive attitude that had been his only good trait, but had become one of many traits now, convinced him. However, even after 10 years and 20 years, humanity did not return. And when 50 years had passed, Yuil Han stopped counting time. Initially, an effort must be made. Yuil Han thought he should prepare for the return of humanity, and do everything he could before the event. Fighting without rules and the use of the spear still leaves a lot to be desired. But that's even a good thing. What a strange man. Even as Litter stared at him very intently, Yuil Han immersed himself again in his training. Angel provided breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so he just had to practice his martial arts. And so, 5 years and 10 years have passed. It's been 20 years since he was unaccounted for. Now his punches and kicks could even kill a bear. And his wooden spear, which was now wider, not only penetrated the sack but also tore it open. Yuil Han didn't think he had any talent, but in 15 years the growth was amazing. Of course, he had an angel who turned out to be a great military ally. Litter. I'm about to turn 40. How do I look? Am I more mature? The only thing you've been doing all this time is striking with your spear, punching with your fists, and kicking. You think you became an adult just by waving your arms. Have you ever seen anyone behave appropriately for their age if they've been training in the mountains? Are you thinking the same thing? My mom won't tell me I'm just pretending to be an adult, will she? Don't think about it, and just keep practicing. From then on, Litter, who used to come once a week, now showed up once every 3 days. All because she was worried and thought that a person could go crazy being alone, trapped in the prison known as Earth. Whether it was her anxiety, or other feelings, Yul Han felt good about her. He endured it for 20, 30 years. How much time has deviated? Watching Yul Han, now even Litter was on the verge of screaming. However, her position in the Celestial Army was not high, and she could not ask God directly. She also had no right to change the temporal axis, so she could only restlessly observe Yul Han's training, day by day. Litter. One day, Yul Han said, in a lowered voice, "I can't remember my mom's face. I'm sorry. Even when I look at her picture, I don't feel like I knew her. Was this person really my family? Haven't I always lived in this world alone? All this, humanity, family, everything was a lie that Litter created for me to comfort me. Don't say such things. Yeah, I was kidding. But it wouldn't be so bad if it were true." He sighed and picked up his spear. It had been 50 years since he had been unaccounted for. "I'm bored. I want to do something else. I'm sorry to say this, but there's no telling when the great cataclysm will happen. You can't just ignore the martial arts. I understand." Now that they had shared a few decades of life, questions of race were unimportant. Yul Han was a man who followed and listened to her. And she spoke and instructed him. She occupied such a position in his life. He was also the only person Litter had known for decades. She began to have feelings beyond compassion and pity. Of course, she would never say it out loud. The strange relationship of these two, which occurred because of God's mistake, progressed. "I'm going to start reading books. That's a good idea. Martial arts would become important after the great cataclysm happens, but reading would help reason and create a basis for your judgments. It certainly wouldn't hurt." Yul Han, who acted swiftly as soon as he made up his mind about something, shut himself away in the college library. As he had promised Litter, he still practiced martial arts for 3 hours a day, but read the rest of the time. Even very good books would become decrepit over time, but thanks to a stopping time, they didn't change at all. That was a very good thing. At first he read modern short stories, but he got bored with them after 5 years of reading, and then he switched to other books. Thinking that his studies might continue after the return of the humans and the great cataclysm, he began to study those books that were in his profession, business management. Then came books on philosophy, psychology, and the rest. Unlike martial arts, where progress in body and weaponry slowed with time, reading was an entirely different matter. Yul Han, who now read day and night, became more and more interested in books. History, geography, physics, chemistry, art. He read every book in the library. After a few years, books just weren't enough. There was no security at bookstores, so Yul Han started reading new books there. However, there was a certain limit here as well. At 67, after being unaccounted for, Yul Han no longer counted. He made an important decision. Let's learn a new language. Let's change places then. I can bring food anywhere. Where does this food come from? Secret. After pondering whether or not to cross the sea, he went first to China, the closest country. Once in the car, he would fill up at a gas station and just drive on. If he had to, he just changed cars. A driver's license. There was only Yul Han in the whole world, and he didn't care about such things. Even moving, he studied Chinese in his spare time. The language gave him a huge headache, and yet, after a while, he could still read it already. China is a very big country, and there were many books to read. It must have been a mistake to go to China. Yul Han shouted with joy as there was so much to learn. Humanity would definitely return before he knew all of China's knowledge. And this fact made him a little despondent. This, however, was a mistake. Even after he had traveled all over China and studied every book he could find, humanity had not returned. Yul Han no longer found out from Litter how much time had passed, and Litter did not talk to him about it. He went to another country. It was because he was afraid he would go crazy if he didn't get new stimulation for tomorrow. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, India, Mongolia. After learning every language in Asia, he read all the books, reports, and even the internet, registrations of everyone who was in those countries. It seemed to him that if he stopped reading, he would die. One day, he forgot to practice with litter, and was close to being beaten by her. "Are you all right? It's okay, I guess." He raised his head. The last page in the last of the 7.5 million books in the Russian Academy of Sciences had been read. Even though there were 7.5 million books, there were many more in other libraries. Yuil Han could now read any book, no matter how difficult or thick it was. As expected, the technical books are still beyond my comprehension. Yuil Han was just reading books. Reading books won't make you a professional in any field. Now, let's go to Europe. You speak Russian now, you know that, right? Yes, in Finnish. Okay, let's go to Finland. As he traveled through Europe, Africa, and the Middle East, his knowledge of languages became much richer. It was his 216th year, after he was unaccounted for. Only America and Oceania are left. Yuil Han rejoiced like a schoolboy who has been given little homework for the summer. Even though he had lived for 200 years, Litter asked with a smile. "You know you have to go on a boat, right? It's all right. There are plenty of boats out there without owners. It's called stealing. The power of time was an amazing thing. An ordinary student turned into an avid adventurer. Of course, it was possible not to travel, but Yuil Han was afraid to stop, as if he would die if he stopped. Using all his knowledge of geography, he found a boat that could cover the desired distance. Before that, in countless books, he had read about how to steer it, so there was no problem with that. Litter, humanity isn't extinct by any chance, is it? I said that there was a deviation of the time axis. I thought at most 2 or 3 times. But it seems to be at least 10 times. How exciting! After he finished preparing for his journey, Yuil Han set out without hesitation for America and Oceania. And so, another dozen years went by. "I'm done. What a good boy. Watching Yuil Han rolling around on the floor of the Boston Public Library, which was known for being the largest in America, she muttered in a half-loud voice. Yuil Han has finally read every book available to mankind. Even though she had seen everything with her own eyes, it was shocking. After he left the library and sat down on a bench outside, Yuil Han looked up at the sky for a while. Then he muttered, "What do I do now? Martial arts. I already do it all the time." He didn't just read books. He traveled through the ruins, studying them, finding forgotten martial arts, and all the time reviewing styles of fighting without rules and spear skills. The training was 3 hours minimum, but sometimes it was 8 or 12 hours a day. The art of battle, which had now reached such heights that even Litter could no longer defeat him without the use of mana, was improving and evolving all the time. It was something that was unattainable for someone without talent, even if they were given countless years to live. Litter of course did not tell Yuil Han this, because he would have been proud of it, and he would have stopped training further. Litter, besides martial arts or knowledge, what else can help after the great cataclysm? The question Litter was asked was the same question she had been pondering. When she heard it, she was covered in goose flesh. His question proved one thing. Yuil Han, who has experienced more than any man who has ever lived, still has not lost hope despite the passage of time. For him, life was not over. No, maybe he thought it hadn't even begun yet. All the things he was doing were just preparations for the great cataclysm. It was a long time, even for Litter, but a man who hasn't lived 100 years thinks of so many years as mere training. Of course, he didn't know how much time had passed, and yet Litter felt no less surprise. How can you be like that? Since she was stunned, she just couldn't stand to ask. If Yuil Han, who had lived before, had been asked about this, he might have answered differently. However, someone who had lived for many years without human contact has become like a child, sincere and honest. You told me what I had to do, and I'm doing it. I can't train my mana, so I do what I can. As he said this, he sighed, and Litter was at a loss for words. Countless emotions mixed with each other were on the verge of exploding, and all her thoughts simply vanished. Soon, not knowing what expression she should show, she turned her head and spread her wings. "I'm leaving. Tell me what to do before I go. From now on, think about it for yourself." Litter disappeared, and Yuil Han was stunned. After a cold-blooded assessment of the situation, he muttered, "First, let's go back home." It was a historic moment where the angel harbored feelings greater than mere good intentions. Yuil Han didn't see it that way. He didn't know, but it was going on 274, after he was unaccounted for. Humanity has not yet returned. Yuil Han returned home to Seoul, Korea, and reviewed all the fantasy novels. What will change when the monsters appear? What would one need to be able to do, first and foremost, in a changed society? He wanted to understand. He was no different now from the usual Korean youth who study subjects beforehand in order to study at a better university or to get into a better company. It was natural, because before he was ignored, he only knew that way. So it wasn't that bad. If you do it for about 100 years, maybe you can learn something you need to learn. No, I definitely can't accept it. Litter, who had appeared, snuck up behind Yuil Han while he was studying fantasy. Watching him, and shaking her head, she thought no matter how Korean students study, would anyone be able to study for hundreds of years? Of course, Yuil Han's current actions were mostly from wanting to escape from reality, to forget loneliness, however, not by going deeper into it, but by finding something new. This was proof of his strong mentality. No, perhaps a long period of training and study was able to change him. Litter, since you're here, tell me. I want to try carcass carving or blacksmithing. Which would work for me first? Yuil Han looked at Litter with a very serious stare. Litter thought it was absurd, but she had no choice. What would stand up to monsters? Armor and weapons are the most effective, so I would say both. However, it will be easier for you to learn the basics of carcass carving than blacksmithing. This is a priority in all worlds. Then dissecting. Hey, get some rest. There were plenty of animals in the world, and Yuil Han wanted to hunt every one of them. If he had a good spear, he would not hesitate. He found a cold weapon factory, picked up a spear, and set out to fight. Carving was not an easy task. Not only could an animal not be severely mutilated when hunted, one had to learn how to remove the skin without damaging the meat. The meat had to be cut in the right pieces. It was a profound process, and carving was different for a pig, a bear, a tiger, a lion, etc. Once again, however, time decided everything. Yuil Han hunted and butchered many animals. After decades, he had reached the point where he could simply imagine any animal and already knew how to carve it. Litter, if I kill all the animals now, will the monsters show up later? God sent humans to other worlds so that both humans and monsters could compete on equal terms. Excluding me, of course. Litter just ignored Yuil Han and kept talking. But if you kill all the animals now, it would go against the balance. The reason I'm helping you now is also to keep the balance. You don't think I'm going to let you kill all the animals, do you? Stop it already, you fucking idiot. Call me Ishmael. Don't talk in jokes no one can understand. Don't be silly. It's not that no one here can take a joke. There are no people here at all. After practicing martial arts for hundreds of years, and having read all the libraries, Yuil Han had become strangely stubborn. He acted immediately after a decision was made, regardless of what needed to be done. The sperm whale hunt is an example of this. The sperm whale was in the Red Book and could not be hunted. But Yuil Han didn't care. Won't the animal population increase when humanity returns? Unlike you, they can't eat, and they also don't grow up. But, like you, they don't change age, and they can't have children. And all this, and now you're going to say because time has stopped. Because time OS. Wait, what? He spent 1 month in preparation before encountering a sperm whale, but the time didn't really pass. Yuil Han, who was standing on the deck, dealt with the sperm whale rather quickly, and also cut it up. According to what Litter said, there were some interesting body parts in monsters that had special effects, or there might have been something else that cost a lot of money. Thus, cutting out ambergris, used in perfumery, was good practice. People usually think about the possibility of avoiding monsters that appear in the world. Who sends you to prepare to fight first, and then says such nonsense? Anyway, now that I've mastered dissecting, let's move on to forging. Yes, you do everything. Everything. That was when exactly 300 years had passed since it was disregarded. He took a regular hammer, and he felt nothing. Since he had to learn only from notes, it was incredibly difficult. However, because of a body that had been developed through hundreds of years of training, he felt no fatigue from the constant work. When? SS. Read. Fantastic. Novels. Them. All of them. Studied. Skills. Very. Easy. But, why? SS. So. Not. I can't. Why? Not. Can. How? They. Yuil Han spoke every word as the hammer came down on the iron. He gritted his teeth the same way. Then don't do it. Litter wanted to say those words, but she knew nothing could stop him anymore. So she simply summoned the wind, and it blew on his wet head. Simple. Teach me. Me. Skill. Under. Name. Wind. I thought I said you should know how to use mana. It took him 5 years to get used to the furnace, extracting various metals like iron, fanning the bellows and making swords that could be called, come off. Litter, who was taking Yuil Han's first job, which was neither a half sword nor a dagger, closed her eyes softly, and then opened them and looked at the sword again, determined to voice her honest opinion. I wonder if you can slice a radish with that dot. I didn't tell you to cut your radishes with this, so give it back. I wish it had been a souvenir. I will ask the Lord God for this thing to stay after the world dump. Why are you so fond of scaring me? And when another 30 years passed, finally Yuil Han made a sword that was better than the factory-made one. After another 50 years, he was sure that his weapons were the best ever made on Earth, but Yuil Han continued to improve his blacksmithing. Like a student who got a 97 on a fake test, Yuil Han was hooked on blacksmithing, not knowing if there was even a limit to how much he could improve at it. He made swords, spears, axes, and even pole weapons. He was also able to make some armor, brass knuckle gloves. And another 50 years flew by. No, you can't even cut a cucumber with that. You know diamond pickles. It's bad, but that's life. People could have talent and others simply don't have it. According to whether you have talent or not, there are always people who can't reach the heights, no matter how much they try. And there have been people who can set a world record just by trying once. But there are people who have achieved everything just by their hard work. Yuil Han was not a genius who could do anything just by trying. But when he made a tremendous effort, his abilities increased. Slowly, but relentlessly. It was a rare coincidence. The one God had forgotten about, for him, this time was a blessing. The ages became his assets for the future. When a total of 200 years had passed since he had picked up a hammer, Yuil Han had finally created a weapon that appealed to him. It was not a super alloy of titanium and carbon fiber, or any other super material. It was made of steel, but the spear was very sharp and hard. For a man, of course. What do you think? I thought there was a limit to the technology of the people of Earth, but human persistence works wonders. Ah ha 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 ha. I finally created a steel spear that can make even Mopamo cry. N/A, mythical spear maker in Korea. Nevertheless, this spear, there were moments that even Litter could marvel at. It was so sharp that it seemed to cut you when you just looked at it, and it also had a unique hardness. The tip and shaft were separated by a socket. N/A. A socket is a device designed to connect the ends of shafts and parts sitting loosely on them to each other, but the shaft was also metal, so the lance was heavy. Only Yuil Han and Litter would be able to wield such a spear freely. True, there was no one else on Earth right now but them. But I told you, didn't I? When the mana activates, a lot of new materials will appear. So why are you so fixated on metal? Now that I'm used to working metal, it doesn't matter what the material is, I can work any material. Yuil Han responded indifferently, and began to swing the spear that Litter had given him. Since it was made for him, he felt just fine. It was a piece that would be able to be used for more than 10 years, and kept in excellent condition. It was 507, after he was unaccounted for. And so, Yuil Han sighed, putting aside his spear. What now? Litter's heart sank after she heard those words. She wished more than anything in the world that humanity would return sooner, when she had seen him with a hammer in his hands all these years. But she didn't know when it would happen, for it had been 50 times 10 years. What kind of temporal axis deviation would there have to be for this to happen? Litter wanted to pick on God, but truth be told, she had never even seen him. A being from whom you couldn't ask for answers, but just wait. She learned this from the older angel. The big cataclysm should be coming soon, right? You don't know when you'll have to fight monsters. I think it's best to improve your martial arts, and strengthen your senses. Well, I guess we're passing the 100-year boundary as I've been forgotten, so it should start soon. Right? Yuil Han was a man who was completely immersed in the task in front of him, so he did not know how much time had passed. All the devices showing the time had stopped. Except for Litter, who was a superior being. Litter was just unlucky. And so Yuil Han took up martial arts again. It was still the same no-holds-barred fighting and spear control, but too many things had changed from what they were before. The degree of hardening of the body, and the methods of attack were different. Also his concentration was on a different level. It increased because of reading, and blacksmithing. Whoa, I feel like I've been swinging a spear for 3 hours now. Litter, give me something to eat. I'm so hungry I'm going to die. The concentration while he swung his spear made him hungrier than usual. Yuil Han thought so, but Litter was sweating cold inside while she kept a smile on her face. He swung his spear in full concentration not for 3 hours, but for 3 days. From then on, Litter began to bring food once every 24 hours. Of course, the portion was huge, but Yuil Han ate it all quickly, and concentrated on learning again. When another 200 years passed at this rate, Yuil Han felt that the spear was not enough for him, and he began to train with other weapons. Daggers, two-handed swords, axes, and even pistols could not escape their fate. He explored and studied taekwondo, aikido, karate, muay thai, kickboxing, and even some martial arts that existed only in records. At that moment, he overcame his limit, and his body began to transform. First of all, the strength and power of his muscles became higher, but the volume decreased. It wasn't just the shrunken muscles that people were talking about. His body cells, which were not aging, but were being strengthened all the time, began to mutate. They became stronger, but they didn't prevent him from moving freely. The skin, bones, and even internal organs remained the same. It was as if the body knew that it would have to face a multitude of enemies in the future. A mutation that could not have occurred in several generations was taking place in one person. Lighter noticed this, and she couldn't hide her disappointment. Thanks to God's mistake, she could see how one exceeded all limits even without mana. And when the great cataclysm occurred and Yuil Han learned mana, he would be able to make amazing progress. Perhaps you wanted him to grow up. Do you scare him because he hasn't reached the height you want? Just when already. Soon he will be nearing his limit. Please send people back to Earth before that happens. Before he decides that life is empty, please Lord God. As if in spite of Liter's prayers, time continued to stand still. Fortunately, Yuil Han was immersed in training, and he didn't know how much time had passed. But if he was not God, he would soon reach his limit. When the limit comes, what was Litter supposed to do for Yuil Han? What? Is there anything that Ilhan has not yet experienced? Litter's imagination, which was almost endless, once went into an interesting branch. A scene where a man and a woman intertwined their bodies on a bed played with strange colors in her mind. Among the people, the woman had Litter's face, and the man's. After watching Yuil Han kicking and attacking the blocks of rocks with his fist, her cheeks became like a tomato. Even now I am so superficial, like an angel who does God's bidding. Even though I have been freed from trivial emotions and desires. However, the more she thought about Yuil Han, who immersed herself in reading, blacksmithing, and martial arts, the more her thoughts began to translate into reality. The newest and most shocking stimulation. No matter how fed up Yuil Han was with this or that activity, he always completed it to the end. He could immerse himself in this activity for 200 years without doing anything else. Litter's face turned even redder as she imagined it. Her face changed because of the emotion. If someone had told her before that this would happen to her, she would have laughed. Yes, it is, after all, part of God's assignment, not to fulfill my wishes. If one did not wait for the great cataclysm and died in the middle of waiting, it would ruin God's reputation. That's what I came here to do from the beginning, so that wouldn't happen, thus I'm right. With a speed that would have made Usain Bolt cry, her thoughts were justified. And now she was choosing the time to present it to Yuil Han. She wanted to find him a new occupation immediately, judging by her heart. No. For Yuil Han, who immersed himself in training completely, that would not be right. What would work would have to wait. At the same time, Litter didn't understand Yuil Han's true purpose at all. Yuil Han has of course evolved and moved around to avoid dullness, but the main goal is survival after the great cataclysm. If he just wanted new stimulation, there was plenty he could do. It could have been games, or sports, or something else. Since she hadn't considered it, Litter admitted to herself that she loved Yuil Han. Perhaps Litter was strange, too, since she had been watching Yuil Han for so many years. However, unfortunately or fortunately, Litter did not have time to confess her feelings and desires. Exactly 1,000 years after Yuil Han was unaccounted for, the world went to zero and humanity returned. The first person who realized that something was going on was not Litter, but Yuil Han. Something's moving. What's moving? Your sword. What? GAR. No. In Yuil Han's eyes, the sword was garbage that he had made for the 5th year after he had begun to learn blacksmithing. The sword vibrated. And that was it? The cars in the street, Yuil Han's clothes, and other things in the world, moved. It meant only one thing. Time began to run again. Everything comes into motion, though it was stopped when time stopped on Earth. Stop shouting for joy. Better do something with that sword. Just throw that junk away, I'll make you a perfect sword. Why do you need this junk? No way. While Litter nervously held her sword with both hands, Yuil Han began to move. His body did not return to its original state. It was just his body moving back to where it started. Visually, it was like a bird flying through the sky. I can fly. Oh, Ilhan, wait. Lord God, please. Give me time to say goodbye. Litter, who was thinking about the sword, finally realized the situation, and screamed to the heavens, but God wasn't paying attention to her. While Yuil Han was drawn to the campus in his hometown, Litter was drawn to the heavens by unknowable forces. The force was so powerful that she screamed with powerlessness. You take me so easily, but why now? You're going too far, too far. Litter was insulting God, not at all like his messenger. The only thing she could do now was stare at Yuil Han's back, and hug her sword. You left me a sword, so I take back what I said. You're going too far. Would she meet Yuil Han again? She prayed that God would allow her to do so. She prayed that it would happen as soon as possible. Tomorrow would be the best time. She never would have imagined that when she arrived on Earth 1,000 years ago, she would be in this position. As she closed her eyes, she thought of only one thing. After all, we didn't even kiss. While Litter returned, Yuil Han also returned to the campus. He was carelessly thrown to the floor, but he leveled his body and landed softly to reduce the damage. I have a great feeling. He flew above all the buildings and mountains. It was a thrilling feeling, and he decided that he would learn to fly as soon as he learned to use his mana. Yuil Han looked up into the sky. Seeing Litter ascending into the sky, he sighed. Yuil Han subconsciously groaned at the thought of her flying away without even saying goodbye. Was he just an ordinary person to her? Was she really just with him because she was bored? But it didn't matter. Litter, who never refused to spar with him, was kind, sympathetic, and comforting in times of need. As soon as he thought he would never see her, his heart emptied. It was normal. He thought it was normal to be with her, but for an angel like Litter to come into contact with an ordinary human like Yuil Han was already a rare event. Beings that would not have met even in the same space. Didn't Litter say she was a supreme being? A supreme being? Yuil Han muttered, and clenched his fists. To accumulate knowledge and methods for humanity to survive the great cataclysm. That had been Yuil Han's goal up to this point. Now he had a higher purpose. If I become a higher being, then I can meet her again. I will finally be able to stand on the same level as her, and speak as an equal. So I will become one. There was nothing I couldn't achieve by working. So I can achieve that, too, if I work myself to death, right? Yuil Han decided exactly that. Of course, Yuil Han did not know that Litter had fallen in love with him, as this was a man who had not even held a girl's hand in over 1,000 years. Regardless of what Yuil Han decided, the world returned to its original state. The blown-up cars returned to their original position, and everything in the world that had been damaged was restored. At this point, Yuil Han simply closed his eyes and waited, as he had done in the past. And as the hours passed, he felt the world, and the changes in it. He knew his physical body better than anything else. And a small but clear change occurred in him. A cool, bright, striking, powerful energy permeated him. As his heart pounded, that energy pounded in unison as well. There was nothing to think about. It was mana. A new energy that Earth had come into contact with. An energy to which humans had adapted for 10 years on other worlds. The energy to which Yuil Han was to adapt in the future. He himself was different from his past self when he was a freshman at the university. At any rate, he had the knowledge and skills of thousands of years, didn't he? Yuil Han opened his eyes. There were many people on campus. There was surprise with a touch of nervousness on their faces. People. There were a lot of people here. Because he was incredibly excited, he wanted to scream, but he held back. We're really back after 10 years. According to them, we can finally. Ooh, I'm scared. Hey, I can open a status window here, too. Man, there really was a reset. Shouts and exclamations could be heard here and there. But Yuil Han sensed that something was wrong. What they said about coming back after 10 years was consistent with what Litter had said, and there was nothing strange about that. However, weren't they too familiar with each other? Normally, when people lived apart, in other worlds, it was okay to be awkward with each other. If it's not like that, it means. Doesn't that mean they all lived in one world? If you think about it, there was no reason to separate people from Earth. And if there was, wouldn't people have known then that he was absent? Yuil Han began to get nervous, and turned his head, even though the people he missed so much were right in front of him. However, he was in the middle of the square, and it was impossible not to notice him. Unless, with Macron. Yul Han raised his head. It was as if the people around him were talking only among themselves, and were not looking at him. No, as if they couldn't see him. Of course, the special situation in which he returned played some role, but it was as if they had agreed in advance not to see him and to ignore him. How was that possible? This must be it, right? However, after thinking about the situation, he had no choice but to accept the situation. He had forgotten, because of his conversations with Liter, but he had legendary accomplishments. He was unaccounted for during the elementary school picnic, the middle school boot camp, and the high school field trip. Was that all there was to it? Even if he raised his arm very high in the front seat, he wasn't seen. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him the Phantom Sixth Player, N/A, a reference to the basketball Kuroko plays manga. In short, there was no way that excited earthlings could see Yul Han. A loner will always be a loner. Magnificent. Magnificent, earthlings. He spoke aloud, but people paid no attention to him. He had waited for so many years for people, but now he was sad rather than weeping with joy. He wanted to see Liter, who could always spot him. He wanted to become a supreme being as soon as possible. However, first, let's go back the fastest. With slumped shoulders, he left campus, ignoring the applause of those who returned, the awkwardness of waiting for the future, and their expectations in changing the world. It wasn't interesting to him. I hope everyone falls dramatically and breaks their noses, is what he thought. The buses were still not running. Well, now was not the time for passengers or drivers. Probably everyone went home, and waited for an official announcement from the government, or to meet their loved ones after the separation. In any case, Yul Han could run tens of kilometers per hour if he ran, so he had no intention of taking the bus. Right now he was the fastest man in the world. Except for the mana, of course. She said that mana was an omnipotent power. It could strengthen the physical body, make you move faster, or give you strength. If he remembered Liter's moments of using mana, he could accept her explanation. People were divided again into two classes: those who could use mana and those who could not. Unlike the people who had practiced using mana for 10 years, Yul Han only felt it now, and was at the very end of humanity. Why is everything so wrong? The knowledge I have accumulated over 1,000 years in no way puts me at an end. 10 years will pass, and I will be higher than anyone else. Now that he had lived so many years, he had confidence in himself. To tell you the truth, it was a sober assessment of his abilities, but he didn't know it. All because Liter had forbidden him to look down on anyone, just as she had forbidden him to look down on himself. Oh, right. Status. This was the thought, just before he arrived home. Liter said, because of the Great Cataclysm, the Akarshi Chronicles came into contact with Earth, and people got the right to see them. The other returnees spoke similarly of status. But how can I see him? As soon as he thought about it, the green text began to appear on his retina. Yul Han stood silently. He was in a state of great shock. From the moment Liter said, status, he had already predicted that human power would be measured using levels. And so, the status window, as in any game, appeared before him, and there was no problem with that. Monstrous status wasn't a problem either. The results of his training over the years translated into numbers he was only too happy about. The status bonus wasn't a problem either. This was not a game where you could easily raise your stats, and Yul Han thought it would be the same with magic power. Yes, none of this was a problem. The problem was the title and the skill. A concealment he could not remember learning, and a title that was full of intentions to mock Yul Han. Why has concealment become passive? Are you implying that I am hidden? Do I have a hidden life? Will I remain a loner even if I go into space? Anger he had never felt in his life filled him. This was the moment when he decided that he would not become a supreme being just to meet Liter. The goal now was to destroy the Akarshi Chronicles. He had a question regarding one thing: passive skills. Thinking about the Akarshi Chronicles on Earth, it was incredible that they could not record the ability for humans. It wasn't a man who could make a mistake, it was the universal records. That they would make a mistake had to be outside the realm of recognition and chronicles, like God. How could it be unidentifiable? Yul Han thought about this until he reached home, and successfully came up with one hypothesis. At the present time my physical abilities and concealment are working, so the records of them appeared. However, the records of the abilities I learned in the past may not have appeared because time on Earth was stopping. And the Akarshi Chronicles have only recently come into contact with Earth. He assumed that everything he did when the Earth was stopped in time was not recorded in the Akarshi Chronicles. Yul Han was not sure of that, however, it did add up. Well, I'll find out if I move forward. He trusted the days he lived and trained more than a line or two in his eyes. It's not like he can't swing a spear, just because the skills aren't identified, so he didn't do anything about it. He opened the front door of his house and walked in, planning to take a shower before checking out any passive skills that might come up. But the next moment a man appeared before my eyes. R. Only that silly sound escaped his lips. The moment he realized it was stupid came later. How could he forget such an important thing? How could he not remember his beloved family? Yuil and his mother stood in front of him. Although they had been away from each other for an enormous amount of time, to the point where he felt like a stranger to her, he knew immediately who it was after he saw her. The crying woman in front of him was his mother. His brain didn't remember that, but his heart did. Mom. Saying out loud a word he hadn't said in a long time, Yuil Han grabbed his mother. He cried like a little baby, as if the past years had never happened. His mother cried, too. They cried until his father came home. After their hearts were reunited, he wanted to eat. His mother, Kim Yisil, felt the same way and started cooking. Yuil Han had been getting food from litter for 1,000 years, though he didn't know it himself, but he hadn't seen her cook, so he was touched by the scene. The appetizing smell of the rice that was frying in the pan delighted him. Thanks for the food. The dinner had all the ingredients that were in the house, and it passed peacefully. It seems that they, too, learned something from other worlds. However, Yuil Han could not enjoy the food. It was because his parents started talking about other worlds. Where have they sent you, son? Mom was sent to the Yaryuman world, along with people from our neighborhood. It has no name. He couldn't tell them that he had been left all alone on Earth. Fortunately, his muscles had shrunk in volume, so he didn't look much different from his old self before and after the time stop. He wasn't worried about being identified by his appearance. Haisha was a beautiful world, if you forget about the fact that there is no rice there. Also, mana or whatever is really hard to master. Even if I can use it, your father can't kill monsters. Yuil Han's father, Yu Young Han, complained as he took his first spoonful of rice in 10 years. Kim Yi-sil nodded in agreement. That's what I mean. They took newborn babies, old people, and even pregnant women, and made them suffer. Seeing them suffer for 10 years made me feel very sorry for them. I wish they had only taken the young and strong. They said it was because it would have gone against the balance otherwise. That means that if they knew a better way, they couldn't use it. What? Yuil Han, who had blurted out the truth litter had told him, realized it only now. The stares were fixed on him. There were not many times when he had lied in his life, but he would now have to withhold some information. At this point he fixed it in his brain. And no, I just think it is. Balance? Efficiency? To hell with it all. When I've seen people dragged out of their homes for 10 years, and put through such misery, I grit my teeth. With my teeth. That's why you won't grind your teeth anymore, because we're back, right? Every time I hear you grind your teeth, I start gritting my teeth because it annoys me. Yuil Han thought that the day when he would go to get his prosthetic jaw had not yet come, so he finished his meal. But he immediately realized that his parents' gazes were fixed on him. How about you, son? You can kill a monster if you use mana, right? When I talk to people around here, they said that a monster killer can make large sums of money. Most likely. Not many people have a talent for killing monsters or other shit that's dangerous. Won't the country stand up for its citizens and take care of them? You say the country will give us money. It's not like that. Monster corpses are expensive. Considering his parents, who talked about fantasy things so naturally, was strange to Yuil Han. He thought about the life of the forgotten. Even though humanity had returned, he was still a loner. He was angry because it was no different from his former life, so there was no time to be sad. But I should know more about deep-sea fish than my parents. When he thought that, he became even more devastated. I can't use mana. And he confessed by telling the truth. All right. Let's work harder, son. I knew that. You can't fool the genes, can you? His parents took this information too easily, and he became discouraged. It was reasonable, however. To his parents, he was the son who spent his days playing games, reading, and studying, hating lessons. It was hard for them to assume that their son would run out of the house, surrounded by mana, and hunt monsters. They probably asked with a "what if" and got a, as expected, answer. Listen to the government announcement coming out at 9 p.m. They are so incompetent. What if a monster shows up somewhere nearby? Should we move to an area with a powerful mana user? It's going to be okay, but you can't go to work. How can I do this? The company has already called me more than 10 times. I have to go, even if I die on the way. Hey, don't say things like that. His parents chatted happily. Since they hadn't seen each other for a long time, their longing had built up for each other, and they seemed closer than usual. Honestly, Han was prepared for the opposite, so he breathed a sigh of relief. He gave up watching TV in the living room, and went to his room, thinking that now there might be a little brother in the next year. Han planned to search the internet for information about the current situation. However, he was as shocked as when he saw his mother as soon as he entered the room. Why is this here? Is this God's prank? Or is it because Litter asked for it? Wrapped in a dry cloth, his spear lay in the middle of the room. Han immediately shut the door so no one would see the weapon. Why is that left? Every change that occurred because of him had to disappear. Even the spear that was made with the soul had to disappear. But why? There was no way to find out. Did God give him the prize because he saw his status and felt sorry for Han? Did Litter, who screamed for the sword to stay, ask for something else? Anyway, the thing was great. He thought he would have to make a spear in the near future, thus he was thankful to God. Han thought about hiding it in a closet, and at that time, information about the spear appeared on his retina. Han's steel spear, rank, unique, attack power, 800, strength, 500/500, miracle created by human hands, without the use of mana. Comparable to a monster spear. And how do you know if that's a lot or a little? 800. But looking at the Akashi Chronicles, he thought that one way or another the spear would help until he acquired better materials. Then, is it time to start? The return of humanity, and the great cataclysm happened at that moment, as expected. People were scattered to other worlds, but now that they have returned, they must cooperate with each other in order to adapt to the changed reality. Lots of people have to provide information about what they have seen and what they are good at. Han chose the internet. This was because it was the easiest way to find out information. There's a new text. Han sat down in front of his laptop. The internet pages, which had been the same for a long time, had now changed. He smiled when he saw it, feeling delighted as it was a new stimulation. Christopher Columbus felt the same way, finding a new continent. He became the captain of a boat that sailed the new seas and sailed to new information. Since everyone spoke differently, it was difficult to distinguish truth from fiction. For Han, however, this was not too difficult, as he had been reading for centuries. He used the official government statement, and compared what other people had written to this information, quickly figuring out what was what. In other words, there was very little truth. There's a lot of liars around here. I hunted a dragon in another world. I subjugated a princess and made her my sex slave. I solved an important issue of the whole empire, and got a super item. Such nonsense was full. Listening to them kill high-level monsters was like listening to a kobold kill a demon. I have to choose from objectivity. For starters, he organized the information by level. So far, level 5 people were equal to an ordinary civilian. Starting at level 7, you could become a soldier, and when you became level 10, you could become a swordsman, an archer, as well as become a commander of 10 people. When people reached level 10, they would reach grade 1. It was sort of a second promotion. There was a division between powerful and non-powerful people. It was a line beyond which the Akashi Chronicles were better understood. If you don't take level 2, you can't get above level 50, and if someone actually reached level 2, even the nobles wouldn't look down on you. Grade 3 was given at level 100. From that point on, you would become the highest class in the country. By rising to this level, very few would have been able to raise their level higher. It was known that there was a class 4, but there was not one person on the internet who had seen one. There were only predictions of high-level monsters, class 4 or 5 dragons. This was information about levels. Among the rest, there wasn't much useful information. To begin with, he has to go to an institute. It was because the government, along with the army, assured the people that they could protect them, and would come up with countermeasures against the monsters, and everyone should behave as before. There was also an announcement to create a special corps made up of mana users, but who knows what could happen in the future. I have to protect my body. Training and suffering were just that. He had no thoughts of going back to the institute and leading a passive life. Therefore, it is necessary to train mana. Since he thought there was no difference between the way he had lived before, he sighed, and immediately remembered the kind and beautiful Litter who had been by his side when he was training. He wanted to see her again. I want to see Litter. If she found out, she would be very glad. A voice that sounded out of nowhere. He tensed before turning sharply. On the wide-open window stood something winged. If you ignore that it was very small, the appearance was very similar to that of litter. I was sent here to help you adjust to manner, and I, a trespasser on private property. Angel Attar. This was the moment when the second intruder of private property showed up. Angel.